Alright, so I'm back for part two. I'm going to be installing the seal here, rear axle, then reinstalling the differential cover under there. One thing I didn't show was cleaning these brake shoes. They did have some gear oil on them, so I cleaned them probably 5 times with brake clean. Doesn't appear to be any oily residue. Hopefully that'll do the trick. So if you didn't see part one, I removed the differential cover, removed this axle and the seal, and discovered I had some deep grooves right here in this housing, so I repaired those. So if you want to check that out, that's in part one. Also in part one, I failed to mention I did not have a rear sway bar on here. So the rear sway bar is something you would want to remove. Typically bolts right here on the bottom of your lower control arm. So yeah, you want to remove that before you start anything. And I don't have quad shocks in here either, but I may put those back in when I reassemble all of this. So yeah, it's time to start reassembly. A few things you're going to need. I went over most of this in part one, but in part two I will be using a new seal. This one's a Yukon brand. And also a new bolt for the rear end. There's this Dorman brand, part number 81048. I'll put a link for that in the summary below. You'll need your torque wrenches. I've got this one for inch-pounds because the Scotch-8 cover calls for these to be torqued to 5 foot-pounds. Let's see, you'll need some hex sockets, 22 millimeter socket. The hex sockets are 10 millimeter, 5/16 and 1/4 inch, and 6 millimeter. So you need a whole variety of these hex sockets, along with a 3/8 socket and a 1/2 inch socket. If you have the stock cover and not the Scotch-8, you'll need a 1/2 inch socket for the bolts around the outside here. And then of course your gear oil, friction modifier, and the seal for the cover. Alright, that's it, so let's get started. One other thing you'll need is something to tap the seal in. And I just picked up this set, so I'll be using one of these to tap the seal in so you don't damage it. Picked this up at Harbor Freight for like 40 bucks, I think. I've needed one a couple of times, so I went ahead and bought it. But if you don't want to buy one, you can always rent these at your local auto parts store. Usually they rent these for free. Alright, so everything's pretty much clean. This is all cleaned out. I'm going to put a little bit of oil, gear oil, on the seal itself, and probably add a little bit right around here on the bearing where I was cleaning the inside of this housing. Alright, the outside of the seal is completely coated. Just go put it into place here. I can do this inside part after I get it installed. Alright, then we're going to use our tool here, and I've got this just a little bit bigger than the opening here. That way when it gets all the way flush, it will stop and I won't push it in too far. You don't want it to go up against the bearing inside there. You just want to keep it as flat as possible. And that's it. You'll feel it as soon as it stops on this edge here. Alright, should be good. Now I'm going to take some additional oil and put inside here and make sure this is completely lubed up here. Alright, so we are ready for an axle. Alright, so before I put the axle in, I'm going to take a little bit of gear oil. We'll put right here, and I do want to feel right here to make sure there's no weird notches or grooves or anything, and this feels fine. And then, so I'll put some oil on there where it meets the seal. And then I'll put some oil on here too, where it contacts inside the housing there. Alright, that should be good. And this notch right here, this is where that C-clip is going to go after you get this installed. So you just want to support the entire axle here and just carefully slide this through, especially when you get first contacting the bearing, to make sure you don't bump that. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to jump underneath and put the C-clip on this axle. And when we put the C-clip on it, we'll pull this out just a little bit this way, probably about that far, and it'll lock that C-clip in. And it'll be ready for the next step. Alright, so I've got my little C-clip here. We'll put it on a magnet. I can get it in there without dropping it, hopefully. So you'll see, I'm trying to zoom in and move this picture around. That may be good. You can almost see, without me even pointing it out, right in here there's a little, you can see where the axle shaft comes in, and that there's the slot. We'll move it around so you can see it. Pull it out a little bit, push it back in. You see right there. So you'll see the little slot where that C-clip goes. You just use the magnet and slide it straight in. Then when I get it all the way on there, pull the axle back, and it'll lock it in to where the C-clip won't fall off. Kind of spun around on me, so I can turn it just a little bit. Here we go. I think it was actually getting kind of squeezed in this part of the spring right here where it comes in close towards the inside, so it wasn't sliding on easily. It's kind of stuck in there. But I got it on there all the way and then pulled it back, and now it's locked into place. Alright, now the C-clip's in. We're going to put in the pin that holds it all together. It keeps your axles from moving inward. So you want to hole that has the end, that's where the bolt's going to go through. So you want to find the place where the hole is here, that the bolt's going to go through there, and line those up. So I'm going to spin this all the way around. And right there's your little notch for that bolt. There's my hole there. I'm going to slide it through from this way. And it should slide through pretty easily. There we go. Alright, I've got a brand new bolt. This is a Dorman product, number 81048. I'll put a link for this down in the summary. And this is the 5/16 socket. Yep. And you want to tighten this bolt to about 20 foot-pounds. And you might want to put this in gear before you start this, or else this thing will just spin on you. Or you could just shove a rag in there. When this thing turns, it'll lock in on a rag. There you go. So that's done. Axle's in, pins in, bolts in. Next thing I gotta do is the cover itself. Right, so I've got my gasket here. This gasket's just gonna go on dry. You don't use any type, you don't put any oil on it, you don't put any type of other sealant on there. Just bare metal and that gasket. And then on the cover, I'm going to put some little pieces of a sticky note on here, just so I can mark down the torquing order, just so I can follow the specs for the Scotch Drake cover here. So it kind of makes it easy when you're under the car, not really have to think about which one you're doing. Just two. Alright, so let's take this gasket and the cover, jump under the car, and it's ready to bolt on. So I'm going to bolt these down to, I believe, 25 foot-pounds, following the order here. But I'm not going to, start them all and then torque the first one down to 25. I'm probably going to torque them to about 10, and then go around to about 20, and then do them all again to about 25. So I kind of step it up to the spec torque. Alright, so again, all of these surfaces need to be clean and dry. Don't put any oil or any type of sealant on here. And just want to match up the holes. You'll see this gasket just has little notches on each side here at the bottom. So it's going to go just like that. So I think I'm actually going to put a couple of bolts in my cover, put through the gasket. good and snug with the just my regular ratchet, but now I'm going to use the torque wrench and take them all, I guess, to about maybe 15 foot-pounds. Start with number 1. Now I'm going to bump it up to about 20. And do it all again. Alright, I'm going to bump it up to about 25. And this will be the final pass for these bolts. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is loosen up these jam nuts. You know, take them all the way off, but just bring them out to the outside edge there, just so you know they're not going to impede you torquing down these bolts. Which this was a this is a 6mm. So we're going to turn these in to about 5 foot-pounds. Alright, so this measures in inch pounds. Need to go to about 5 foot-pounds, so that's going to be 60 inch-pounds right here. And that's it. Alright, that's it. Those are all the way as tight as they need to be. Now the jam nuts, I don't think there's a torque spec on those. You just want to tighten those down enough to keep these from coming loose. Alright, so I could have put a good bit of torque on there, probably 40 or 50 pounds. So again, it's just torquing against this bolt. It's not running anything in, so that's good. Now we're all done. Next thing you do is take out the fill plug, which is up here. I'll just get these threads cleaned out. It'll be ready for some new thread tape. So you may be asking, why do we need to take out the factory fill plug on the back side? Because this fill plug is higher than the factory one, so if you filled this all the way up to here, it would have too much fluid in it. So you take the rear plug out and you fill it up through here because it's accessible, and you fill it up until it begins to run out of the rear plug on the back side. Then you'll know it's at the right level. And I believe OEM spec says to fill it up to a ½ inch below the rear plug. So that's kind of hard to determine, so I think most people just fill it up to that till it starts running out. Okay, so in relation to the rear end, if you go on the, I was thinking it was on the passenger side, but it is on the driver's side, all the way up towards the very front of the hog's head here, just above this lip that sticks out back behind there, you will feel the fill plug right in there. I can just reach it. So if you go back over this fin, right there, that's where that is. There's actually a 3/8 drive that'll fit it. So I'm going to use just this, and if I go up in there, should be able to get it right in. That's pretty easy to find. Alright, so now that's in there. I just need to break it loose. And there it is. Alright, so the next step is to start adding the oil. So I picked up this little hose adapter a while back from a local parts store, and it threads directly on to this same gear oil bottle thread. Goes on pretty tight. Feels like a good connection there. So I'm going to try to use this. I'll just dump this bottle upside down with this end in the housing, and we'll see how it works. If it does work, I'll put the information for this hose in the summary below. Also, the rear end should take about 2 quarts here, but after I empty about half of this into the rear end, I'm going to add the friction modifier to this big container, and then I will put the hose back on and continue emptying this in there. There's just not an easy way to put this little bottle, put the contents of this directly into the rear end, so it will be easier to add it to this and continue the same method. Alright, so let's try this out. The one thing I'm really curious about is to, you know, this fluid's pretty thick, how well it's going to flow through here. It's got like an on-off twist cap. So I've got it completely open, so we'll see how it flows through here. But that's it. Be sure and have a towel underneath the factory fill plug where you remove that, in case so when the fluid starts dripping out, you'll be able to catch it. Alright, so just give the bottle a squeeze here. Well, it seems to flow through pretty easily. It's kind of hard squeezing this bottle though. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and add the friction modifier, and then I'll continue. So here's the friction modifier I use. Is the Ford Motorcraft, and so I've already dumped this into my bottle of gear oil. I did it out in the driveway because you don't want to spill this in the garage or near where you're working because it's really smelly. And I think I bought this on Amazon because it seems like some of my local auto parts stores didn't carry this brand, and I wanted to use this brand. So I'll have the link, the Amazon link, in the summary below. Alright, we'll move this camera so I can get at this from a little bit different angle. Alright, finally this camera's out of my way and you can see this oil going in. Alright, that bottle's in. Alright, so I put in 2 full quarts plus the friction modifier, started running out the rear fill plug, so I'm going to put this plug back in. I'm going to put my thread tape on there. And this is the 10mm hex. Alright, so now just have to clean up the back of the housing. You see I'm dripping some oil down here, catching on those rags. So I just need to clean up the back of this housing and we'll be good to go. Alright, so I just want to jump back here, wipe up this excess oil everywhere. I'm ready to put my fill plug in. So I'm just using my plug. If you can see that in the video or not. No thread tape or anything. I'm just going to screw right in. And I just need to get my 3/8 socket adapter on there. And that's it. Make sure all that's cleaned off, and it's done. Alright, so I've got all my plugs in. I don't know, these are bolted down to the right torque. These I put my brake drum back on. Got my oil in there, friction modifier, so really this is 100% complete. My next step, I'm going to put on the rear sway bars, the factory rear sway bar. I need to clean it and paint it. And actually before I do that, I've got some new spring insulators because I'm missing, I believe, the bottom ones. So I'm going to replace those on each side, and then I'll do the rear sway bar, and then the rear end will be done. Hey, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.
No fear, I'm standing right here, eyes peer with my mind clear, never look rear, only up, never down, off the ground till I'm found, hear the sound, listen to me now, as the beat pounds, every ounce of my effort pouring out, so you never have a doubt. Do you like me now? Am I good enough now? Should I get more loud to get hear the fucking sound? Oh